There are moments in a person's life when a single inner command is enough to turn the entire destiny around. Not a lengthy philosophy, not a rousing speech, but one single sentence short, clear, sharp as a blade. That sentence, if repeated at the right time and in the right way, becomes a seed planted deep into the soil of the subconscious, where every future decision is formed. You have heard thousands of pieces of advice, read countless books, but what truly determines your fate does not lie in the quantity of knowledge. It lies in the power of one single thought, engraved into your mind and nourished with faith. That is law, a law that does not need your acceptance or your debate. It only needs your practice in order to be proven. Most people underestimate the simplicity. They think, what difference can one sentence make? Yet they forget that even the greatest empires began with a single command, that an entire army can move from silence to charge with one order, that an invention which changes the world often begins with one idea, compact, precise as an arrow. In your mind, that sentence is the command. It has the ability to summon all the invisible forces: focus, imagination, willpower, faith towards one single point, once sown into the subconscious. It ceases to be words. It becomes a blueprint, a map for the subconscious to operate like an untiring machine. Ask yourself, how many years have you let your mind wander like a drifter, falling asleep each night with a jumble of worries, anger, regrets? You think that sleep is rest, but the truth is, the mind never stops working. It simply works with whatever you left for it before closing your eyes. If it is fear, then fear multiplies. If it is doubt, then doubt imprints itself deeper. If it is a clear desire, it gradually shapes the path to turn it into reality. The sentence you utter before sleep thus becomes the invisible blueprint of tomorrow. A single sentence, but repeated each night with the weight of faith, can achieve what 1,000 scattered daytime efforts could never reach. Because during the day, you are distracted by work pressure, by social noise, by a chorus of competing voices. At night, when the gate of consciousness closes, the subconscious opens, it becomes obedient, receiving commands without argument. This is the moment that sentence walks straight into the deepest layers of the soul. It is no longer a declaration. It is the seed of destiny. People often ask, truly, just one sentence. The answer is yes. But it must be a sentence that is clear, unwavering, breathing the spirit of final decision. It is not "I wish" or "I hope." Such phrases are too frail, brushed aside by the subconscious like faint whispers. The powerful sentence must thunder like a command that permits no refusal. I am creating wealth through the power of my mind and my actions, or I master time and money, and my life serves that purpose. Not a wish, but an affirmation. Not a promesse, but a law already declared. Once you recognize the value of the final hour of the day, you will never again underestimate what you think before sleep. You will understand why the wealthy, the leaders, the empire builders never let their minds drift aimlessly into slumber. They end their day with command, like a general locking in strategy for his army before nightfall. And the next morning, while the world still slumbers, they act within the orbit of a plan already outlined by the subconscious. You can test it tonight. Instead of letting trivial thoughts take over, choose one sentence strong enough. Write it down. Speak it out loud. Repeat it until it feels etched into every cell. As you close your eyes, let it echo like a heartbeat. Tomorrow morning, you will sense a different energy. Not fleeting excitement, but the solid foundation of a new belief. After 30 nights, That habit becomes the backbone of identity. After 90 nights, it engraves itself as truth within the subconscious. And the outer world has no choice but to mirror what you have already decided. A single sentence can change your life, not because the words themselves are magical, but because it becomes the programming command for the most powerful machine you own, the subconscious. This is not comfort talk, not a short-term motivational trick. This is the law of the mind, a law that has operated silently for thousands of years and produced every great figure in history. They did not wait for luck. They did not allow the subconscious to be poisoned by doubt. They commanded, and the subconscious obeyed. The only question that remains is this: will you continue to let each night pass under the repetition of fear? Or will you begin tonight with a sentence that will rewrite your entire life? Because whether you want it or not, each night you are planting a command. The only issue is it the command of a passive soul, or of one who has decided to seize destiny in their hands? Every morning, when you open your eyes, you step into a gigantic mirror called life. No glasses needed. No shining silver. Your very first emotions upon waking are the truest reflection of your destiny. Do you awaken with excitement, or with a sense of heaviness? Do you open your eyes to welcome a new day, or merely to face the same exhausting loop again? The answer not only reveals how you are living, it foretells where you are heading. A person who enters the morning with joy proves he is on the right track. Another who rises with weariness shows he has lost his way but has yet to admit it. Gazing into this mirror is a ruthless but necessary test. Look straight. Are you living as the master who directs, or merely as a puppet on strings? Is your day something you actively design, or something pulled along by outside events? Are you truly free to give your family the time they deserve? Or is every hour chained to responsibilities you do not love? Do you have enough peace to sit and enjoy a meal without the weight of bills, debts, or the calculations of survival? If the answer to these questions is only an awkward silence, then the mirror has reflected the truth. You are not satisfied. And deep inside, you know it. People often learn to disguise dissatisfaction. They smile in public, but their eyes betray sadness when they sit alone. They tell their friends they are fine, yet at night they toss and turn with unanswered questions. This is the tragedy of someone who has surrendered control of life and tries to excuse it with small compromises. But the truth cannot stay hidden forever. The inner mirror never lies. It reflects exhaustion, procrastination, the erosion of willpower, things you may try to ignore with work, with entertainment, with alcohol, but can never erase completely. You may reassure yourself that it is only a phase, that everything will be fine. But how many years have slipped away in such temporary promises? How many seasons have passed while you stayed in the same place, repeating a job you hate, living a life that bears no resemblance to your true potential? If you look into the present mirror and see that joy is rare, freedom is gone, excitement has cooled, then have the courage to admit it. You are not living as you desire. Admission is the first step, for no one can build a castle on false foundations. The present mirror also reveals another truth. Every decision you avoid leaves a trace. You cannot pretend to your family that you are still strong when they hear your sighs. See your tension. Feel the uncertainty in every move. You cannot hide from your children that you are struggling, when their eyes have long since learned to read the truth. And you, more than anyone, always feel the sharpest division between who you are and who you want to become. That gap is the root of all anxiety. You need a moment of clarity to ask yourself, am I heading in the right direction, or merely drifting on inertia? Imagine if tomorrow never came. Would you be happy with what you have done today? If the answer makes you hesitate, that is the alarm. Successful people never let their mornings begin in dullness. They have programmed the night before to awaken with fresh determination, and if you are waking with fear and weariness, it means you are allowing your subconscious to gnaw at you with the wrong commands. The image in the present mirror is not fixed. It is only the temporary result of repeated thoughts. If every day you sow anxiety into the subconscious, every morning you will encounter the face of panic. But if you begin sowing a powerful, clear command, the reflection the next day will change. It will carry more confidence, more light, and in time, it will become an entirely new person. You are not sentenced to live forever with the weary face in this mirror. You can rewrite the whole expression with a new decision. Imagine just one sentence before sleep is like issuing a command to the entire system. If you go to bed with the thought, "I am not good enough," the next morning you will step into the world wearing the armor of insecurity. If you go to bed with the declaration, "I am becoming wealthier every day," the subconscious immediately seeks ways to strengthen that belief, causing you to act differently, speak differently, respond differently. And soon enough, the morning mirror will reflect a new person. Therefore, we see the morning mirror as the most honest report of how you treated your mind the night before. It is not biased, not decorated. It only reflects exactly what you repeated. If you are dissatisfied with that image, do not try to cover it up. Change the command you send to the subconscious, for it is there that your true face is carved. Every person has two lives, the one they are living, and the one they know they deserve to live. The present mirror shows you the gap between the two. The question is, will you continue to look at that gap each morning with helplessness, or begin to narrow it every night with a clear, decisive command? The choice does not lie in circumstances nor in other people. It lies in what you whisper to yourself before you close your eyes. Most people go to sleep like beggars, carrying in their heads a sack full of worries, regrets, and fears. They close their eyes not to rest, but to sink into a storm of chaotic thoughts. They replay each mistake of the day, relive arguments, dwell on unpaid debts, and imagine tragedies that have yet to come. The subconscious, like fertile soil, silently receives all that tangled weed, and the next morning, it gives back exactly what was sown. They open their eyes and feel their shoulders heavy as stone, their minds foggy, their hearts restless. They call it fate, but in truth, it is nothing more than the inevitable result of having unconsciously programmed failure into themselves. Look at the crowd, and you will see a recurring script. People work tirelessly all day, only to return home at night with exhausted bodies. Instead of cleansing their minds, they switch on the television, scroll their phones, and pour upon themselves another storm of news, nuance, and fears from the world. When they lie down, instead of giving their subconscious a clear command, they leave it to struggle with scraps of chaotic emotions. They drift into sleep in weariness and confusion, and the result can only be one thing. The next morning, the subconscious rises with exactly what it absorbed: worry, uncertainty, and self-disgust. Thus, they live their entire lives like ships without a compass, pulled by waves and drifting from day to day, never knowing what shore they wish to reach. They resign themselves, comforting each other with phrases like, "Everyone's the same. That's just life. No effort can really change things." But the truth is, they do not lack ability. They only lack the discipline to command the most important hour of the day, the moment before sleep. The crowd often mistakes the source of results, believing that life is determined by the sheer volume of daytime work. They think that if they work harder, they will change their lives. But if you look closely, You will see some people work less, yet achieve 100-fold more. The secret lies in their ability to harness the subconscious, while the crowd leaves it overrun with weeds. A laborer who toils all day but plants fear into his mind. Each night is no different from someone sowing rotten seeds on fertile soil. Soil does not distinguish between good or bad seeds. It simply germinates whatever is planted. The subconscious is the same. Sow fear, and you reap stagnation. Sow a clear goal, and you reap achievement. The majority repeat one fatal mistake. They believe sleep is a harmless void, nothing more than simple rest. Yet the truth is the opposite. It is precisely when the body rests that the mind begins its most intense work. It sorts, connects, builds, and carries out everything based on the final material you provide before closing your eyes. If that material is fear, if it is doubt, then the product of the morning will be a weak spirit, a heavy body, a new day steeped in disappointment, and the loop continues. Go to bed in negativity, wake in exhaustion, live an ordinary day, then replay it all again. This is the tragedy of the majority. The greatest tragedy is that they do not realize they themselves are the ones issuing the command for that entire script. They think everything is imposed by external forces, economy, circumstances, luck. But the root lies within, in the very words. They whisper before drifting into sleep a repeated phrase, "I'm so tired. I don't know how I'll manage tomorrow. I'll never be good enough." These are the commands seeping into their flesh and blood, becoming identity, and that identity rises with them the next morning, guiding them into a day already lost at the starting line. Those who wake in despair are not failing because they are incapable, but because they have been feeding themselves feeble commands. The subconscious does not distinguish right from wrong. It only obeys. It does not reason. It does not argue. It simply works with the material it is given. The crowd, out of ignorance, provides it with nothing but garbage, and then wonders why their lives are filled with dead ends. They do not know that by merely changing the input, the output changes instantly. The problem of the majority lies further in this. They have been convinced they have no choice. They believe life is predetermined, that sleep has nothing to do with success. They were never taught that the final hour of the day is the most crucial, that in the moment when consciousness grows weary, the gate of the subconscious opens wide, and any word spoken passes straight into the soul. Because they do not know, they unknowingly allow toxic words to become the compass of their lives. When a person continually plants seeds of fear, he cannot create. When he sinks into helplessness each night, he will never find the courage for bold action. When he replays failure again and again in his mind, the subconscious turns it into a map, guiding him to even more failure. Thus, every morning becomes a distorted copy of the morning before, living trapped in that spiral. He concludes that life is unfair. But the truth is, life only reflects exactly what he has sown. You can see this in your own life. How many times have you woken heavy-hearted with no enthusiasm, no drive? How many times have you opened your eyes only to recall yesterday's worries? And how many times have you repeated a lifeless sequence of actions, ending the day only to continue the same cycle? That is the chain of unconscious commands you have been repeating each night. The majority sleep in fear and wake in despair, not because they are weak, but because they never learned how to protect the golden hour of the subconscious. They let it be stolen by scattered thoughts. And by the time they realize it, they have already lost years of their lives. But if you are reading these words, it means the door is still open. You do not have to remain like them. You can begin tonight, change the command, change the material, so that tomorrow morning, the mirror will no longer reflect a face of despair, but a person who is rising, There is an hour in the day that most people consider trivial, yet those who truly understand the laws of success revere it as sacred ground. It is not the noisy morning, nor the long hours of toil at the office, but the final moment before your eyes close. In that hour, the body prepares to rest, but the mind enters its most intense phase of work, consciousness, weary, recedes. The defensive walls of reason lower, and the subconscious, the loyal warhorse, throws its gates wide to receive commands. Whoever knows how to use that hour to plant commands holds the key to destiny. By day, you are surrounded by 1,000 noises, other people's words, the pressure of work, the scraps of life crowding your head. Willpower, no matter how strong, is easily eroded by such dispersion. But at night, when light yields to stillness, the true moment of power arrives. Then, a simple sentence can pierce every layer of resistance, go straight to the core of the self, and take root there. That is why, for hundreds of years, empire builders have treated the hour before sleep as golden, where they issue commands to the subconscious and let it operate through the night on their behalf. Imagine this in the daytime. You are an architect sketching on paper, but in the hour before sleep, you hand that blueprint to an invisible workforce, the subconscious to build in the dark. If you give them the plan for a castle, they will start laying bricks. If you hand them a chaotic picture, they will just as diligently reproduce it. The subconscious does not distinguish. It does not argue. It only obeys. The choice is yours. Will you have it build a castle or bury you in a maze of fear? The wealthy, the successful, the figures you admire never let that moment slip by aimlessly. They understand that each night is an opportunity to issue a command, and a command repeated long enough become destiny. Andrew Carnegie advised the young people around him to write out their goals and read them before sleep, for he knew that vast fortunes are not built by sleepless, grinding hours alone, but by the quiet hours when the subconscious absorbs directives. Henry Ford, after every public failure, never went to bed with the thought of defeat. He rehearsed in his mind the certainty of the success to come, and his subconscious knew no objection. It only knew to work to find the path for execution. The crux is this: the hour before sleep is not merely the time you close a day, it is the moment you open the door to tomorrow. It is like signing a contract with yourself. If you sign with fear, tomorrow you will be paid back in more fear. If you sign with a decisive goal, tomorrow will revolve around that goal. Remember, you never happen to wake up in a random mental state. That state was set the night before. The crowd often misses this power because they believe sleep is empty time. In reality, it is the period of deepest restructuring. The subconscious is like a blacksmith working through the night. It takes the last material, you feed it a statement, an image, a feeling, then heats it, forges it, and returns to you in the morning a renewed identity. This is why some people wake brimming with ideas and vigor, while others open their eyes to gloom and resentment. The cause does not lie in circumstances, but in the command issued during the hour before sleep. This power becomes dangerous if you do not master it. For it is the same power that turns the evening's complaints into a sentence for the following day. A person who repeats, "I am helpless. Tomorrow will be no better," unknowingly turns those words into a compass. The subconscious does not distinguish a joke from a complaint or a solemn affirmation. It receives them all as commands, and then you wonder why your life does not change, when each night you have written a script that repeats stagnation. Conversely, those who understand the law never let that hour go to waste. They treat it like a sacred ritual. They switch off every source of noise, sit in silence, and speak to themselves one single sentence, clear and commanding. They repeat it until it ceases to be words and becomes a feeling. When it has soaked into their very fibers, they surrender to sleep and let the subconscious work. The next morning, they rise not only with a restored body, but with a soul programmed to advance. You must understand the hour before sleep is the one time of day when you fully control what flows into your mind. In the morning, you are assaulted by news, requests, responsibilities. By day, you fight relentless pressures. But at night, when everything has settled, you can choose the final sentence. It is the rare chance to write directly into the ledger of the subconscious. If you miss it, you have handed the pen to fear and let it write for you. That hour is not a minor habit. It is the switch that turns your entire life on or off. All wealth, every great achievement, has seeds planted there. Those who use it step forward. The crowd that neglects it stays in place. The law does not play favorites. It rewards those who obey and punishes those who belittle it. If you truly want change, begin by mastering this hour. Do not treat it as a meaningless minute. Treat it as the hour you sign a decree for your destiny. For when you whisper a command into the subconscious in that final moment, your inner world labors through the night to make it real. And the next morning, when you look into the mirror, you will see a person already changing, not by magic, but because the law began to operate the moment you closed your eyes. If there is one common trait among all those you call successful, it is not innate intelligence, nor random luck, but the way they treat their subconscious. They understand that every action, every habit, every visible achievement is only the tip of the iceberg. The massive, hidden part that governs it all lies in the commands repeated within the subconscious. Ordinary people let it drift aimlessly, while successful people train it as they would train a loyal army. And each night before sleep, they know this is the golden moment to plant commands at the deepest level. Observe closely a corporate leader, a great artist, a world-class athlete. All of them have a silent ritual before the night closes. They never let their subconscious slide into chaos. They use affirmations that are clear, decisive, repeated until the mind accepts them as self-evident truth. While the crowd chews on the failures of the day just past, successful people feed their minds with images of a tomorrow already achieved. The difference lies not in circumstances, but in how each person programs their brain. Successful people understand a principle the subconscious does not argue. It does not question. It only accepts commands repeated with strong emotion. That is why they absolutely forbid themselves from uttering weak phrases like "I wish," "maybe," "if only." Such words are signals of doubt, and the subconscious will turn doubt into reality. Instead, they affirm in a tone that leaves no retreat. I am building wealth through the value I create. I master time and determine my destiny. Their words carry the force of command, not negotiation. While you may still hesitate in front of the mirror each morning, they have already seen the image of who they want to become, because the night before, they had planted into the subconscious a complete picture, the posture, the voice, the aura, the wealth, and the subconscious, like a colossal construction machine, immediately begins building the bridge between the present and that image. Outsiders may think it is natural confidence, but in truth, it is the result of hundreds of nights of silent training. One of the secrets few are willing to admit is this: great achievements are more often prepared in silence than in noise. Successful people dedicate the final hour to reprogramming their entire being. They carefully select words, hold a decisive state of mind, and repeat until the subconscious treats it as a memory already lived. As they drift into sleep, they let that sentence echo like a heartbeat until it sinks fully into darkness. And when the sun rises, they are ready to act as though it were already true, because to the subconscious, it already is. Remember Edwin C. Barnes, the man with no money. No, connections. Only one burning affirmation: I will go into business with Thomas Edison. Every night he repeated it, not as a vague dream, but as a command. For years, he persisted in sowing the same seed, and eventually it sprouted into reality. Others saw it as a miracle, but those who know the law understood it was simply the inevitable result of consistent programming. Successful people act during the day, but they are prepared the night before. They do not allow work, pressure, or noise to dictate the state of tomorrow. They decide for themselves by closing each night with discipline. You can work 12 hours and change nothing if you still go to bed with worry and wake with doubt, but you only need 15 minutes before sleep to plant the right command. And in a short time, your entire behavior, choices, and results will shift. That is what the crowd fails to grasp. They rush to work harder, while the real key lies in working with the mind itself. Subconscious programming is not mysticism. It is a law of the mind, as strict as gravity. Successful people do not waste time debating it. They simply apply it, repeat it, and reap results. They know that every night is a time to submit documents to the invisible workshop, and the next morning, they need only continue building upon the blueprint already drawn. That is why they move faster, stronger, more decisively, while the crowd spins in the same old loops. So what do successful people do differently from you? They know how to seal their lips against complaints. They know how to choose a single goal, turn it into a clear command, and engrave it into the subconscious with words, emotions, and imagery. They go to bed not in panic, but in calm control. They treat the bed not as the end of the old day, but as the signing table for the new one. And once the command is planted, they let the subconscious, the machine that never sleeps, do the rest. You can see this in your own life. There are nights you go to bed in excitement, with a clear idea in mind, and the next morning you rise with completely different energy. Conversely, there are nights you cradle worry, and the next morning the world is just a repeat of fatigue. The difference does not lie in the number of hours slept, but in the command planted before sleep. Successful people know how to harness this difference every single day. They never let sleep be random. They turn it into a ritual of power. They turn every final word into the seed of tomorrow. And over time, those seeds sprout into careers, fortunas, influence. The world looks on and calls it luck. But the truth is simple. While the masses drift, they have programmed. While the crowd plants fear, they plant power. While others treat the night as rest, they treat it as the workshop of destiny. If you want to know the secret of successful people, do not just look at how they work during the day. Look at the final hour before they sleep. There you will see a silent discipline that carries the strength to transform an entire life. In the spiritual realm, there is an immutable law. Whatever is repeated with strong emotion will imprint itself upon the subconscious and become reality. This law shows no favoritism. It does not distinguish between right or wrong, benefit or harm. It only obeys your persistence. Sow fear into it each night, and you will reap a life of trembling, five and fit. Sow into it the certainty of success, and you will step into tomorrow with a different stance. The wealthy and the poor, the brave and the timid all are products of the same law, differing only in what they repeat. You must understand the subconscious has no reasoning. It does not argue. It does not doubt. It does not judge. It is like fertile soil that receives any seed planted in it. If you plant weeds with words of complaint, it will nurture them. And the next morning, before your eyes lies a garden of stagnation. But if you plant seeds of certainty with unshakable faith, it will nurture them with the same devotion. That is why a single sentence, if repeated with belief, can become the foundation of an entire life. Most people are unaware that they are applying this law daily. They think they are merely thinking to feel better or speaking to lighten the heart. But every sigh they utter is in fact a suggestion repeated. They mutter phrases like, "I'm not good enough. I'll never escape this situation. Tomorrow will be just as bad." With each repetition, they hammer another nail into the door of destiny, making it harder to swing in another direction. And when their lives turn into a bleak picture, they call it fate, when in truth, they have simply used the law of repetition against themselves. The successful are different. They know this law exists, and they use it as a tool. They never allow themselves to repeat empty words. They turn language into a weapon, and they wield it with intent. They affirm their goals, repeat them tirelessly, until belief takes root. They understand that the subconscious must be guided with consistency, for only repetition carves deep impressions. A single affirmation is like a stone thrown into a pond, making ripples that fade away. But an affirmation repeated night after night is like hammer strikes shaping metal, bending it into the desired form. You can see this most clearly in the stories of great men. Edison failed thousands of times. Yet each night he repeated the same belief that light would manifest. It was the repetition of this faith that prevented his subconscious from ever allowing surrender. Or Lincoln, before delivering speeches that shook history, spent countless nights alone, repeating in his mind each word, each idea, until they became part of him. By the time he stood before the crowd, he no longer had to try to persuade. He simply expressed what had already been ingrained in his subconscious through repetition. The crux of this law lies in the union of repetition and faith. Repetition without faith is nothing but empty words. Faith without repetition will be swept away by doubt. But when the two meet, the power becomes absolute. Each time you repeat a sentence with genuine belief, you carve a new groove into the subconscious. With enough repetition, that groove becomes the default pathway for your thoughts, emotions, and actions to flow through. And from there, the results of your life change. The crowd often despises repetition. They want quick change, instant results. So they try for a few days, then quit. But this law does not bow to impatience. It only serves persistence. A bad habit repeated for decades cannot be erased in a few days. Just as a mighty tree requires time to anchor deep roots, a new belief also requires steady repetition to uproot the old. Successful people understand this, and they persist not because they lack alternatives, but because they know it is the only path. Faith is the element that lifts repetition from mechanical to creative. When you repeat a sentence lifelessly, the subconscious receives it as a distant sound. But when you repeat it with fire in your eyes, with vivid images in your mind, with the feeling that it is already true, then the subconscious no longer distinguishes between present and future. It simply accepts and begins working to turn that image into reality. This is why successful people often visualize vividly that they have already achieved their goals, then repeat affirmations with full emotion. They do not wait for success to believe. They believe first, and success must follow. You can begin testing this law tonight. Write down one clear affirmation. No vagueness, no uncertainty. Read it slowly. Repeat it with emotion until you feel your heart beating in rhythm with each word. Do not expect instant results. Let the law work in its own way, silent, steady, tireless. After a few weeks, you will notice subtle changes: the way you think differently, the way you speak with more confidence, the way you make decisions with more resolve. That is not luck. It is the first sign that the law of repetition and faith is reshaping you. Success does not come from scattered effort, but from turning right thinking into fixed habit, and habit is only formed through tireless repetition. If you understand this law, you will realize there is no mystical difference between you and the successful. The only difference is that they repeat faith, while you repeat fear. They sow commands of building into the subconscious, while you sow complaints. But the moment you change direction, the law begins to serve you instead of oppose you. The law of repetition and faith is the hammer and the flame that forges identity. No one escapes it. You only have two choices: to let it silently imprison you in negative commands, or to wield it to free yourself and construct an entirely new life. And that choice is not made in the noisy hours of the day, but in the silence of the final hour before sleep. When you whisper the sentence that will become the soul of tomorrow, a command that is to become destiny cannot be vague. The subconscious obeys only sentences that are decisive, clear, leaving no room for doubt. It is not a judge to weigh, nor a philosopher to debate. It is like a loyal craftsman: give it a blurry blueprint, and it erects a hesitant structure. Give it a crisp design, and it builds a solid edifice. Therefore, the sentence you choose to plant in the final hour of each day must be an unmistakable order, structured like a contract, proclaimed like a royal decree. Most people fail not for lack of faith, but for lack of precise definition. They blurt out lines such as, "I want to be rich," "I hope life gets better," "I wish I were free." The subconscious hears these but has no material to work with. It does not know how much rich means, what exactly better looks like, what state freedom refers to, so it loosens its grip. No directive is executed. The power sentence, therefore, must be as specific as a map with a destination, numbers, a deadline, and above all, certainty. Those who understand this law never use half-hearted words. They do not say, "I will try." They affirm, "I earn $100, 000 a month, by delivering real value to others. And I begin right now." That is not a promise. It is a command. Their language contains no hesitation, only decision. A power sentence always carries three elements: a specific goal, a time frame, and a firm tone. Omit any one of the three, and you plant in the subconscious nothing but a vague cloud, too weak to become reality. Look back at history and the people who used power sentences to open the way. Edwin C. Barnes did not say, "I want to work for Edison." He declared, "I will go into business with Edison." One sentence that identified the partner defined the position and issued an order with no retreat. Repeat that sentence long enough, and his subconscious forced the world to reconfigure itself to match the inner map. In the end, reality had only one option: comply with the command he had carved into himself. You must understand that the subconscious operates like a colossal computer. If you input vague commands, it will output vague results. If you give it a precise command, It will search every way to process and bring you to that outcome. A clear affirmation is a line of code. You want wealth. Define the exact figure you want. By what means? Within what time frame? You want freedom? Write it as I have full control over my time. I devote my mornings to my family. And I take daily action to make this real. Only when the subconscious has specific instructions does it unleash its power. The power of the sentence also lies in consistency. You cannot change the sentence every night. Today I want wealth. Tomorrow I want peace. The subconscious requires steady repetition. It must be engraved over and over with the same line of code until it has no choice but to accept it as self-evident truth. Successful people do not scatter seeds everywhere. They choose a single seed, plant it, water it with faith, and patiently let it grow into a mighty tree. The crowd plants today and uproots tomorrow, and ends up with nothing but barren ground. A power sentence, when repeated, ceases to be mere words. It becomes identity. You will notice the first changes not in your wallet or job, but in how you stand, how you speak, how you act. That sentence gradually redefines who you are. And once you have changed, the outer world is forced to respond. Success does not come from magic, but from becoming the living embodiment of the sentence you plant in your subconscious. Do not confuse slogans with commands. A slogan is something you stick on the wall that never reaches the marrow. A command is what you repeat until it threads through your bloodstream. Successful people do not need posters everywhere, because in silence their sentence already resounds. It is in their eyes, their bearing, their decisiveness. Others can feel it without any explanation. The power sentence is your personal declaration, the contract you sign with the subconscious. When you repeat it before sleep, you are casting a spark into your deepest layer, night after night. That spark becomes a flame, then a torch that leads the way, and one day, looking back, you realize the whole journey was decided by whispers in the dark. So what is your sentence? Is it clear enough for the subconscious to understand and act on? Does it carry the weight of decision? Or is it only a feeble wish? Carve it again, refine it until it is a concise, sharp line containing enough goal, time, and faith. Do not let another night pass with your subconscious groping through chaos. Each night is not just sleep, it is a contract for tomorrow. And that contract holds value only when written as a power sentence, decisive, clear, and bright as steel. History is not short of proof of the power of planting commands into the subconscious. The people who changed the world did so not merely through superior intellect or abundant resources, but through a quiet habit. They knew how to program their own thinking. In the dark, while the crowd sank into worry and fatigue, they sat in stillness and sowed the sentences that would shape the future. The subconscious became a secret instrument, and the result was that they stepped into the light as if guided by a superhuman force. But there was nothing supernatural about it. It was simply the law of the mind operating precisely for those who knew how to harness it. Let us begin with Henry Ford. Few remember that Ford was once considered a fool for pursuing the idea of a car for the masses. He was mocked, opposed, even called delusional by his own engineers when he ordered the design of an 8-cylinder engine in a single block. Yet Ford never went to sleep with the sound of ridicule in his ears. Each night, he planted in his subconscious an absolute belief the car for everyone would appear no matter what anyone said. His subconscious did not doubt, it only obeyed. And it was that very repetition that opened the road to an industrial revolution. Ford was not some superhuman mechanical genius. He was a man who planted a command so clear that nothing could shake it. Andrew Carnegie, one of the great steel magnates, did not rise to the summit by luck. He had a habit of urging the young around him to write down their greatest goal and read it before sleep. Carnegie himself practiced this. He did not speak of present poverty or describe lack. He affirmed the prosperity he was determined to create. His subconscious received those commands and guided him each day to act in alignment. That very habit transformed a poor immigrant boy into the richest man on the planet at the time. John D. Rockefeller, remembered as one of the most powerful billionaires in history, did not live in ease at every moment. His early life was marked by harshness and instability. But rather than going to sleep in panic, Rockefeller turned the day's final hour into a ritual of control. He would often spend a few minutes before sleep giving thanks for what he had and affirming the stability and wealth on their way. This was not merely a religious rite. It was a method of steering emotion and belief. As he slept, his subconscious continued to operate in a tone of calm and resolve, so that by morning he acted with the bearing of someone who knew his path. Abraham Lincoln, before becoming a towering symbol of America, also spent long nights training himself. He did not write every speech at once. He let them take shape in the dark. Lincoln sat quietly, visualizing each idea, each sentence, repeating them in his mind until they became part of him. In this way, when he stood before the public, he did not need to try to persuade. He simply expressed what had already been woven into his identity by repetition. That strength did not come from inborn oratorical talent, but from silent practice with the subconscious. Edwin C. Barnes may be the clearest proof of the power of a single commanding sentence. Barnes came from poverty, with no money and no status, yet he repeated one command only: I will go into business with Thomas Edison. Not I hope to meet him, not I wish to work for him, but a decisive affirmation. Barnes repeated it for years, until his subconscious was forced to find a way to lead him there. In the end, he not only met Edison, he became his partner. The crowd called it luck. In truth, it was the inevitable result of an affirmation planted in the subconscious until it became reality. Consider Woodrow Wilson before he became President of the United States. Wilson had the habit of practicing in silence, building belief in his leadership long before the world saw him that way. For years, he spoke with himself in quiet, repeating the image of a leader of strength and vision. When opportunity came, he simply lived out the identity he had forged in the subconscious. This is why many observers remarked that Wilson did not merely win an election, he seemed lifted by destiny. But that destiny was not random. It was programmed in the long nights when he planted commands in his subconscious. What all these people shared was an understanding that the subconscious works even as they sleep. They did not let that golden hour be stolen by worry or fear. They turned it into a forge, where each affirmation was a hammer blow. And after thousands of blows, a new identity emerged. Outsiders saw only the glory. Behind it lay countless nights of quiet training with themselves. While the crowd goes to sleep in fear and wakes to call their exhaustion fate, the greats choose to plant images of the future into the subconscious. They know the law of repetition and faith turns words into reality. The difference between the two groups is not inborn intellect, but initiative. The crowd lets the subconscious automatically record their worries. The greats choose to write in it with decisive affirmations, and history carves the names of those in the second group. You might ask, if this law is so powerful, why do so few apply it? The answer is simple: because it is too simple. Most people dismiss a single sentence. They want complex methods and elaborate strategies, yet the truth lies in what is simplest. One clear sentence, repeated long enough, is the secret weapon the greats used to build empires. So how will your story be written? Will you let the subconscious be drowned by the crowd's sighs? Or will you plant a power sentence there? As Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller, Lincoln, Barnes, and Wilson once did. The choice requires no witnesses and no applause. It takes place in silence each night as you close your eyes, and from that very place, destiny is shaped. Words can open the door, but emotion is the fire that burns through every obstacle and engraves the command into the subconscious. You may repeat an affirmation hundreds of times like a machine, but without emotion. It resounds only as lifeless knocks on cold metal. The subconscious does not listen with ears. It listens with energy. It does not remember empty words. It remembers the vibration that accompanies them. That is why emotion is the element that transforms a simple sentence into an undeniable command. Think back to an experience in your life you will never forget. Perhaps it was a victory, a failure, a moment of love or loss. What made it so deeply etched into you? Not that the story itself was so unusual, but the intensity of the emotion you experienced at that moment. The subconscious works the same way. It records every command delivered with powerful emotion. If you read an affirmation as though reading a newspaper, it will slip away. But if you read it with belief, with vivid imagination, with every cell trembling with feeling, the subconscious will treat it as truth and begin reshaping reality to match it. This is why so many people fail when trying to build the habit of affirmation. They repeat the words, but in a dry, emotionless state. They mumble a few lines like a duty, yet in their hearts they carry doubt and skepticism. The subconscious receives both signals, the words of desire and the emotions of doubt, and because emotion always outweighs words, it obeys the doubt. As a result, the more they repeat, the more false it feels. Until they give up, they do not realize the problem is not in the words, but in the lack of fire in their voice, the lack of imagery in their mind, the absence of burning belief. Successful people do not make that mistake. They do not just speak, they feel. When they affirm, I am creating sustainable wealth, they picture it clearly: the house, the happy family, the thriving projects. They let their hearts beat faster. Their bodies sense the certainty as though it has already happened. With each repetition, they are not only sowing words, but sowing an entire state of emotion. It is that state which engraves, which transforms into identity. A dry phrase changes nothing, but a sentence steeped in emotion can become the whip that drives the whole being to act accordingly. Emotion is the only language the subconscious truly understands. It does not distinguish between real or imagined. When you tremble in fear imagining an accident, your body breaks into sweat. Your heart races, even though the accident never happened. This is clear. Proof emotion turns thought into lived experience. If you repeat an affirmation with surging emotion, the subconscious also takes it as reality and begins adjusting every mechanism to align with the new belief. You can test this right now. Choose a decisive sentence. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply and declare it with every ounce of energy in you. Do not whisper like one afraid. Speak like a leader issuing a decree. Picture the scene unfolding as it becomes real. Emotion rises. Goosebumps cover your skin. Your voice grows firm. In that state, the subconscious throws open its gates and engraves every word like marks of molten steel. That is the power you must learn to summon each night. You must also understand that negative emotions carry the same force. A person who goes to sleep in regret, anxiety, or anger is engraving equivalent commands into the subconscious. They are unaware, but each time their heart tightens with fear, each tear falls in despair. The subconscious records that as the familiar state to maintain. The next morning, They wake in the same mood and call it personality. But in truth, it is simply the outcome of repeated emotions that have become identity. This is the fundamental difference between those who master and those who are mastered. The mastered let emotions come and go. Let them control and imprison. The masters know emotion is a tool to be summoned at will, especially in the hour before sleep. They discipline themselves never to fall asleep in negativity,